Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Reframeable Podcast, a podcast that brings you people's stories and ideas about how we can work to reframe our relationship, not just with alcohol, but with stress, anxiety, relationships, enjoyment, and so much more. Because changing our relationship with alcohol is about so much more than changing the contents of our glass. This podcast is brought to you by the Reframe app. Reframe is the #1 iOS and Android app to help you cut back or quit drinking alcohol. It uses neuroscience to reframe your relationship with alcohol and unlock the healthiest, happiest you. My name is Kevin Bellack. I'm a certified professional recovery coach and the head of coaching at the Reframe app.
And I'm Emma Simmons. I'm a reframer, certified life coach and thrive coach with Reframe, and I'm from New Zealand, hence the weird accent. But we have another weird accent today, which makes me feel better. Today we're excited to be joined by Rosamund Dean. Rosamund is the author of Reconstruction, How to Rebuild Your Body, Mind and Life After Breast Cancer, and Mindful Drinking, How Cutting Down Can Change Your Life. In 2021, she was diagnosed with breast cancer and documented her journey with a column in the Sunday Times Style. She has since founded a popular wellness newsletter on Substack, chronicling her efforts to future-proof her body in a way that is relatable and doable. Rosamund lives in London with her husband, Sunday Times writer Jonathan Dean, and their 2 children. Welcome, Rosamund. I'm so excited to have you here.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
It's cool having another accent on this podcast because normally it's Kevin and the Americans.
You're the off accent now. Yeah. I'm the odd man out.
To your ear, Kevin, do we sound similar, Rosamund and I? You probably need to wait for us to talk a bit more.
I'm just going to say I believe so, but I do need to hear more. Because now, yeah, you say that and I'm like totally drew a blank on listening to both
I'll
of you.
ask you again at the end of the episode.
It is funny. I have friends who are from Australia and New Zealand, and when they go to America, people ask them if they're British.
Yeah, I've had that.
Common confusion, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say yes, similar.
Yeah. We're getting more people are starting to understand the difference between British and Australia and New Zealand, but they still can't differentiate between Australia and New Zealand. But that's like American and Canadian. I struggle to pick the accents sometimes between Americans and Canadians.
Yeah, that's more of the, progress is Canadian, progress is American. Anytime I hear someone say progress, I'm like, they're Canadian. About is more of an aboot.
Aboot, yeah.
Different emphasis on some O's and things. Rosamund, are you having a cracker day? Do you know what that means?
I actually don't.
No? Okay. Because Emma used that in a meeting she was hosting. I was her chat moderator. And she said, yeah, have a cracker day to someone. And I immediately tensed up. I'm like, what the hell does that mean?
So it does not mean the same thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a cracker day outside.
I've heard a person described as a cracker. Like a firecracker, like a...
Oh.
It does look like you're having a cracker day outside, though. So a cracker day in New Zealand would be like blue skies, and it's just a lovely temperature, and it's a great day.
But I googled it I searched it in the meeting, and it's like in UK and Australia, it means this.
In America, it does not.
In America, we're just like, what? All right, Emma. Go for
First
it.
tangent
Pull my
nailed.
foot out of my
Well
mouth.
done.
Yeah, tangent nailed. Let it begin.
So I was researching you, obviously, for this podcast, and I assumed, as many people would, that once you had the breast cancer diagnosis, actually, first of all, amazing that you've battled this journey and you're speaking about it and sharing it with the world, because I think these are the things that we do need to talk about and take some of the fear and stigma away from breast cancer. So thank you for doing that from women all over the world. Thank you. And when I was researching you, I assumed that you would have become mindful with your drinking after your cancer diagnosis, because we know alcohol does can be a contributing factor to many forms of cancer. But you wrote Mindful Drinking in 2017 and were diagnosed with breast cancer in 2021. So mindful drinking came first.
Yes, it did. It did. So for me, mindful drinking really came after I had kids, because I spent my 20s and quite a lot of my teens and my early 30s drinking like an average British person, just drinking quite a lot all the time. Every social occasion involved drinking. I'm a journalist, so my work involved lots of events where there were drinks. It was incredibly ingrained in my life. And I remember when I was pregnant the first time, I really enjoyed not drinking, and I loved going out to dinner with friends and not feeling really clear-headed the next day and remembering everything that everyone had said and not doing something embarrassing that I might regret the next day. All of those benefits of not drinking. And I thought, once I have this baby, I'm going to carry on not drinking, and I'm going to be this glowing, sober mother who, like, this is my new life. This is what it's going to be like. And that lasted literally until somebody handed me a glass of champagne after the baby was born. I realised that when you have kids, it's really easy to fall into this thing of drinks with mum friends, like drinks to bond with mum friends. Mm-hmm. Then when you go out with your old friends, you really want to show them that you haven't changed and you can still drink like you used to. So you tend to drink even more in that situation. And then you also tend to be spending your money more in the supermarket on bottles of wine rather than out at bars and stuff, because obviously you go out less as a new parent. And then because the wine from the supermarket is cheaper, you end up buying more, or you end up just knocking it back. A measure that you pour at home is generally much larger than a measure that you would have in a bar. There were lots of reasons that I had not foreseen that actually it can be quite a new parent can be a bit of a stumbling block if you're trying to drink less alcohol, because there are just so many ways in which it's involved in that experience. If you think about all of the memes online of mummy needs wine and all that kind of stuff, and films like Bad Moms, and over here we have this show called Motherland where it's like drinking is a big part of it, and it's so ingrained in parenthood as well. I realized that actually if I wanted to drink less alcohol, I couldn't just decide to drink less. I had to really have a plan and a strategy and know how I was going to do it. And that's why I decided to write the book, really. And also it's because at that point, sobriety was not my goal. I didn't see myself as somebody who wanted to, or actually, if I'm honest, who could be completely sober. I just wanted to drink less alcohol and just be a bit more in control of it. And I realised there were lots of books out there about sobriety and not much for people who just want to drink a bit less. So yeah, that's why I wrote it. But interestingly, so many people have got in touch with me since then. I get so many DMs saying that people bought the book because they couldn't ever see themselves as being sober, but they just wanted to drink less alcohol. And then actually, through the process of drinking less and realizing that they can socialize sober and they can manage their stress in a different way, and they can celebrate with a kombucha in their flute instead of champagne. And then once they realize more and more that they can do those things, they start to be like, actually, what role is alcohol serving? What purpose is it serving in my life? And they naturally became sober. So yeah, I'm not saying the book is to trick you into becoming sober. Some people do find that. Other people just drink less and are very happy with that. Yeah, it can be an entry level sobriety tool.
Yeah. I've gotten messages in chats on our community meetings in the past from people questioning Reframe, because we have a cutback track where you can just focus on cutting back, you can focus on going to mindful moderation or whatever you want to call it or identify it as, or there's a quit track where you can work on quitting, being alcohol free. And somebody would ask, okay, what's the goal here? Is Reframe's whole goal to get everybody from the cutback track onto the quit track? I'm like, no. Like, I probably said it in some way, like dramatic way like this, but I'm like, I don't care what you do. Which I do. I want to support people. So I do care, but it is up to you. And it's a gateway to opening the door. That's why I started working here in the first place, because of the fact that it had the cutback track. If it was just all alcohol free, I wouldn't have worked here, because that was me. I was looking for something I'm like, I need to cut back. I couldn't see a life without alcohol. And so AA wasn't going to work for me, because that's in my head was full abstinence, and that's what I have to do there. So I'm not going to go there. So what else can I do? And I love that, your book, Reframe, other things like that have opened that door for us to just think about it, maybe for the first time ever.
Yeah. And it's actually really interesting with mindful drinking, because I remember when the book came out, some people were quite critical and from both sides. So I had drinkers saying, oh, abstemious control freaks out to being sanctimonious and telling us to drink less alcohol. And then there was the kind of some people from the sobriety community saying no amount of alcohol is healthy. You can't tell people they have a healthy relationship with something that's like a toxic substance. And I was getting it from both sides. I feel like you have to start where people are. You have to start from where you are. And there are lots of people. My nan had a G&T every night before dinner and lived to 98 and had a lovely time. And there are lots of stories like that. I'm definitely not demonizing alcohol if people want to have the odd drink. I just want to provide support for people to cut back if that's what they want to do.
I think, I don't know if this is probably not an old wives' tale. What am I thinking of? But I remember hearing or reading somewhere that Queen Elizabeth had a G&T before dinner every night since probably before she was legally allowed to drink. And she lived to a ripe old age as well. So there are people, although I don't know anything about Queen Elizabeth's drinking habits other than that, but there are people that do live to a ripe old age and are quite happy and are able or comfortable with their drinking habits, and that's awesome. But I think it's really cool to have tools and resources out there for those of us who are like, doesn't feel good, or I need to change something but I don't know how, or like you said, just when you do have the experience of a little bit of time being alcohol free, whether you're pregnant or for whatever reason, and you go, oh, actually, this feels really good. I'd like to do that again. But then, I don't know, life keeps lifing, and all of the mummy events where there is always wine involved, and all of the, even, baby showers. We talk about this quite a lot. Baby showers have alcohol now, and school events and fundraisers and kids' birthday parties. So how do you navigate that? And sometimes it does take some tools.
Yeah, exactly. And it's about providing those tools for people rather than telling anybody this is what you must do, because nobody likes to be told what to do. And nobody ever made a healthier choice because of shame or because of being bullied or told to do something. It only happens when you want to and when you decide to do it for yourself.
Yeah, totally. Did you have moment of I've got to do like an aha moment, or I need to do something about this? What was the spark? Was there a spark, or was it a gradual kind of?
I would say it was not one day or one event. I suppose the event would be becoming a parent, because you can't lie in like you previously would have.
Hangovers with toddlers are the worst.
The absolute worst. The absolute worst. And also, I was just really aware that I was not being the kind of mother that I want to be when I'm hungover, because I'm impatient, grumpy, really. And you can't be impatient when you've got small kids. That's like patience is the number one thing. And I just thought in the evening, because then we had another kid a couple of years later, when you get the kids in bed, especially when you have a baby and a toddler, that is a very particular struggle. And when you get them in bed, there's really something about that cracking open a cold drink and like settling on the sofa and being like, this is my time now. I've done my work, the kids have gone to sleep, and drinking becomes so associated with that. And I think it was wanting to break that habit, because I knew that it wasn't making me feel good. It wasn't making me the kind of parent or the kind of wife or the kind of friend that I wanted to be. And also, just to bring in an element of vanity, I was in my 30s and feeling like it's not making me look as good as I like to. You do become aware of the sort of physical manifestations of drinking alcohol. It does make you gain weight, and it does sort of show in your skin, and you are a bit more fresh-faced when you don't drink, let's face it. So I'm not going to pretend vanity was not a driver as well.
Yeah, it's amazing how kids can make you or help you reassess so many things in your life and face your age. Help you realize quite how old you are.
Exactly, when you're not getting any sleep.
So how did you not necessarily that aha moment, except for kids coming along. And how did you make a change though? Your book wasn't out then. What resources did you use, or how did you go about that, and how did that feel?
It's quite interesting. As a journalist, I basically decided to write a book about it.
Okay.
And then I interviewed lots of experts, and they shared their expertise that I could condense into some very practical, useful tips. The first thing I did was have a complete break. So I think, and I recommend this in the book as well, if your goal is not complete sobriety, but just a more mindful relationship with alcohol, then I think it's a good idea just have a month off, just to show that you can, and also to reset your tolerance as well. I think it just makes the whole process a lot easier because you learn a lot about yourself during that month. You learn about the moments that you feel like reaching for a drink and what your triggers are, and whether it's because everyone is so different. So for me, I was always a social drinker. So if I was in the house on my own, I could very easily not drink. I didn't have a yearning to drink. But if I was in a social situation, it was very much a part of that. If I said I wasn't going to drink and then a friend was like, "Oh, come on, it's my birthday," then I would definitely have a drink. Like it was the social pressure that I couldn't cope with. And I remember when I was writing the book, I was talking not to my editor, but to somebody else who worked at my publisher. And she said, "But what about those evenings where you're just like at home on your own on the sofa and there's just a bottle of wine in the kitchen and one glass turns into a whole bottle?" And I was like, oh my God, I hadn't even thought of it from that angle. And then I really went deep into the science of behavior change and realized all the different reasons why people drink and all the different techniques they can use. And I suppose one of the first key things that you will discover about yourself in a month off drinking is why you drink. And that's a really important thing to know from the beginning.
And there can be lots of, like you said, lots of different scenarios of why we're drinking. It can be that social pressure or that social anxiety, or it can be loneliness or boredom when you're at home by yourself, or pure habit of after the kids are in bed, we sit down on the sofa with a glass of wine, and that's our routine. That's what we do. And something I'm really big on when I'm coaching and hosting meetings is figuring out what the antidote is for each scenario. The antidote for social anxiety, drinking, is not the same antidote as for I'm lonely and home by myself, or the kids are in bed and I'm knackered and I just want to chill out. You know, the antidote or the fix for that trigger is going to be a different approach to each of those scenarios. And so figuring out what's going to work in each situation so that you've got a whole toolbox full of tools that you can use no matter what scenario you find yourself in. And I guess part of that month of abstaining and getting curious about things is part of figuring out what all those triggers are and trying to get curious and figure out what the antidotes might be.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I love about the Reframe app as well, is it has all of that. It gets you really thinking about those reasons and shows you science behind them as well, which I think is really helpful for people to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said about building up that toolkit, because that toolbox because we might go through one thing and be like, oh, this worked perfectly. And then so we like, okay, I'm good. I'm going to use this for everything, whatever it is. And then something comes out of left field. And sorry, that's probably maybe that's not a good reference to use with someone not from the US. Actually,
No, we understand left field
reference. Okay.
I didn't know it was a baseball reference, but
you
we
both
know
got me
what
all
it
in my
means.
head about the accent talk in the beginning. But right, it's all these things are different, and something that works in this situation is definitely not going to work in this, or just not be as effective maybe. So it is really about finding that out. I would always say, oh yeah, I drink because of work stress. That was my default in my head, and that's what I believed until I took that break in the beginning, because I did this. I did that clean break in the beginning of my own journey of I was not going to quit forever, but I was going to take a break and find out what really causes me to drink. And I realized there was all the emotions, all the things. And so really getting curious about that. And as you said, like seeing what are what response do I need to insert here in this situation with friends, or in this situation with stress, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned that desire to have a drink once the kiddos are in bed, and you're like, you want to relax, you need to relax, or it's your time, and you feel like you have to have a drink to do that. That's almost the door opening to how we relax as parents, as mothers in particular. I assume fathers do the same thing, but I don't know. Yeah, Kevin's going, yeah.
I did.
What would you say to someone, like, what was your tool in that scenario of how do you relax without reaching for the bottle of wine?
Yeah. One thing that I found really interesting is that it's the ritual of making the drink and it being something special that's just for you and got nothing to do with the kids, and sitting down with it and having that kind of exhale of, oh, this is my time. And that, even just that kind of clink, piss of opening a bottle, I think gives you that kind of feeling of, I think a lot of people had this during the pandemic, actually, when it was the lockdowns and everyone was working from home. There were lots of stats about people drinking a lot more at home. And I do think there was an element of, it got to the end of the workday and people wanted something to demarcate their work time from their own time. And I suppose it's a little bit like that when you get the kids into bed as well. So I realised it's a lot less about what's actually in the glass and it's a lot more about the ritual of it. So I think if you, rather than just trying to cut out that drink and not replace it with anything, I think find an alcohol-free drink that you actually really enjoy. And there are so many options now. Like, every year brings more alcohol-free options, and so many of them are so good. They're like properly delicious grown-up drinks. It's not like the days when if you didn't drink, you had to have a Diet Coke or something. Now there are some lovely alcohol-free drinks, and you can mix yourself up a little alcohol-free cocktail. You could pour yourself, I don't know, whatever it is you fancy, an alcohol-free beer. And I think if you have some nice glassware, some slice of lemon, make it like a special thing, and it scratches the same itch in a way. You can almost trick your brain. So I find that really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's an awesome tip. Of it's not just about not drinking alcohol and like cutting that drink out completely. It's what are you going to drink and like you said, there are so many great options now. Back in 2017, when you started this journey, there would have been very few options. I'm thinking back to when I was pregnant with my youngest, so that would have been she was born 2015. So 2014, 2015, there were terrible options for alcohol-free drinks out there. And now there is so many. What was your go-to? Were you a mocktail maker kind of gal?
So I did. So back then, Seedlip did exist. The alcohol-free gin. Yeah, that was quite an early. That was an early entry into that market, wasn't it? One of the first, maybe, if not the first. And it definitely existed then, because I'm pretty sure I mentioned it in the book. And there was also this drink called Shrub, which is, I don't know if this is quite a British thing. It's made from vinegar, which sounds disgusting. Yeah, do you know it?
I've gotten it because I think I've talked, it was at Liars, is that how you say it?
That's the
spirit.
American.
Yeah, they gave, if you bought a few bottles, they would give you a free 15-minute talk with a mixologist or whatever. And they recommended that. And so I've used that before.
Yeah. I actually love it. That vinegary base gives it like a kind of bite. It's almost like an alcoholic drink. Yeah. So there was like switchels and shrubs. I think are really nice. And kombucha as well. I'm a big fan of kombucha. Although I know in America you can get hard kombucha. Because we went on holiday to America and I said, I'll just get a kombucha. And it was an alcoholic one. I didn't realise that was a thing. But normally over here when you buy a kombucha, it's alcohol-free.
Yeah, same in New Zealand.
Always have to be on the lookout for, I've seen hard root beer, hard seltzer, hard ginger beer was one too that somebody got one time. And I'm like, shit, do I have to watch out for my ginger beer now too in like bars? Because I really love ginger beer because of the bite, like you mentioned with the shrubs. Doesn't remind me of alcohol necessarily, but it just it's different, right? If I drink water and coffee all day, something a little bit different is nice.
It feels like a grown-up drink.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I don't remember exactly where we left off there, but one of the things that I've mentioned to people, or I've talking with people and coming up with, looking at our triggers. We're looking at, is it the witching hour? Is it how can we turn off that autopilot? Or is it, okay, kids are in bed, now I'm going to sit down and relax. And that's one of the things I brought up and think about is, you mentioned you sit down on the couch, you have that drink, you take a sip, and you're like, and that's one of the things I point out is that alcohol isn't in your system. Like, you're relaxed right there.
Yeah.
And that alcohol, even before it necessarily hits your lips, but you're taking a sip and immediately you're just like, okay. Because I think your brain knows that, okay, this is our time. I know what's coming. But that relaxation that's where making something like this, people say, keep the ritual, change the recipe. And having that can mimic that feeling of, okay, this is my time. So yeah, I do think that's a great way to, and it doesn't have to be a non-alcoholic beer or mocktail or replacement. It could be anything that you enjoy, a cup of tea or whatever. But yeah, I think that's something important for me. I know it was to realize, like, I'm relaxed before it even gets in my system because I sit down and I know it's coming.
Yeah.
How can I use that to my advantage?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so psychological, a big part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, that process, that habit. Yeah. So you've been in this game for a wee while now. You've been sober curious and thinking about your drinking habits for at least, Emma, do math quicker than this. I was going to say for at least 10 years. It's way longer than that. 15 years? Not quite. Anyway, a long time. 13 years, 12 years.
What math are you doing?
I'm trying to go 2017 to 2025 and my brain's not braining.
8?
No, that's 8 years. But my son was born before that. So that was when
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah. So he's 10 at the moment. Yeah, nearly 11. So I guess it's nearly 11 years I've been thinking about it. Yeah.
Been in this game. Kevin's absolutely not going to cut that out. He's going to let everyone know how good my math is.
It's early in New Zealand, so we'll give you the benefit of the doubt. It's okay.
Coffee hasn't kicked in yet. My point being, what changes have you noticed, like in the media and in the social perceptions of how we drink and how drinking culture is being addressed? Has there been a shift?
So many. I think the changes have been enormous in the past decade. So when I first started trying to drink less alcohol and struggling with it, I feel like people's attitudes have changed so much since then. Like now, if I went to a party and said I'm not drinking, I really don't think anyone would bat an eyelid. I know they wouldn't because I do it all the time now. Whereas then people would be like, what? Are you pregnant again? Has something happened? Like there would always have to be like a big reason why you weren't drinking. And I think that has been that certainly in the circles in which I was running in London, that was certainly the case. I know it's not the same everywhere. I had an American friend when I was pregnant. I remember she said, why is it a big deal that you're not drinking? I often go out and don't drink. And I think maybe in America, people do drink less. Like in Britain, there is just a big drinking culture and it's just so ingrained in every part of life, from socializing to celebrating to commiserating, like literally everything. Yeah, I would say that has changed a lot. And even situations where you would imagine that you would definitely need alcohol, like karaoke, or do either of you guys know what a ceilidh is?
Yes.
Ceilidh, it's a Scottish country dance party where there's a lot of whiskey traditionally, and you do these ridiculous. I actually went to school in Scotland, and we used to do them as PE lessons. We had to learn these ceilidh dances. So I do love a ceilidh. If it's Burns night, I'm definitely dancing at a ceilidh, and normally everyone at a ceilidh is drunk. Whereas now I've been to some ceilidhs sober, and I've had sober friends there, and it's been totally fine. So I would say there's been a big shift in terms of what I'm seeing with my friends in my age group. I'm in my mid-40s now. And but also a much broader shift in terms of society. I feel like the younger generations, Gen Z, definitely drink less alcohol. I think that's been shown in all the studies. Obviously, there are exceptions to that, but broadly speaking, on the whole, they drink less alcohol than we did at the same age. And I do think there's just been a big cultural shift in terms of awareness around health and wellness, and people want to look after themselves, and self-care was not a thing 15 years ago,
No.
like at all. And now, in like my icons that I looked up to in my teens and 20s were Kate Moss, absolutely hammered, stumbling out of a nightclub, like still looking amazing somehow in her sort of leopard print coat. Whereas now, the people that younger people look up to are people on social media who are very aware, very self-aware, very composed, and very healthy a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's a really cool, I guess, wellness trend that's happening is, I guess, one of the benefits of social media, maybe, that a lot of influencers are wellness focused. So they're working out, they're exercising not to be stick thin, not to be, what do they call it, heroin chic, but to be strong and healthy. And they're promoting or they're sharing what they're eating and trying to eat enough, not, I only had a donut today. Ooh, look at me. Like, it's about eating enough to be well and eating the right kinds of food and a balance of food. So I think that's a really cool wellness trend. If you will.
Social media is very much a double-edged sword, and I guess for every kind of healthy person on there, there's somebody selling something that's not very healthy. But I would say definitely alcohol is less of a thing. Maybe this is a good and a bad thing, that everyone is so watched now, and everything is recorded and captured.
Yeah.
There's less of the kind of abandon that there was when I was younger, when you went out and if you were drunk on the dance floor, nobody
no one had their phone out filming it.
There was definitely nobody filming it. And obviously young people these days do not have that luxury. I think they're just very aware that there's always somebody there to capture something, whatever happens. So I would say maybe that's a negative thing, but in terms of drinking less alcohol, I suppose that's been a positive.
It could be, right? There's plenty of people I would probably be the one who, if we had cell phones back in the late 90s, early 2000s when I was in college, wouldn't have cared much, probably. But I'm glad we didn't. So there's very little evidence. But that is, the awareness for sure. But also, being mindful of how I see it with my daughter too, like how you put yourself out there on social media or what people see, what you don't want them to see, and all of that. So it's difficult.
I guess with your background as a journalist, is it a passion? Your Substack is amazing. There is so much cover. It's like your mind, body, or hormones that you address, your breast cancer journey, nutrition, movement. It's like a whole wellness, like a whole body. Do we call it a blog? Is a Substack a blog? We'll call it a Substack. Is this like your journalism and wellness passion merging and exploding in a good way onto the internet?
Yeah. I feel like the joy and the luxury and the privilege of being a journalist is when I've got a problem in my life, I can write about it and then just find the best experts and interview the people that know the most about it and learn about it. So I think I've been very lucky so my job previously to having had breast cancer, up until 2021, I worked in women's magazines over here in the UK, Marie Claire, InStyle, and I was deputy editor of Grazia until I went freelance. I handed in my notice to go freelance. I had a 3-month notice period. I worked that, and in the last week, just before I was about to go freelance, I got diagnosed with breast cancer. So it was like the worst possible timing, because obviously if I'd still have had the job, then I would have had sick pay, whereas I was going into this world of being a freelance journalist, having been a big COVID cliche and reassessed my values during lockdown and decided that I wanted to be around more for the kids and that kind of thing. So I handed in my notice, didn't have a job, was at home. This was just as we went into the second lockdown as well, and the one in January 2021 that was really bleak. In the UK it was, because the weather here was awful and it was so dark and it was so depressing and all the schools were closed, so we were having to do homeschooling and I had to have chemo on top of that. It was just a lot. And in a way, it was terrible timing. But in another way, it turned out, it didn't feel like it at the time, but in retrospect, it was amazing timing, because I just had such a hunger to learn about how to be healthier. And I was very much like, why has this happened to me? I didn't have the genetic mutations that make you more likely to have breast cancer. Because I was comparatively young and had a family history, they did all those tests and they said I didn't have any of them, which is obviously great news. But also I was like, then why the hell has this happened? So I really went deep into all of the lifestyle things. So everything that you do appears to either increase or reduce your risk of cancer. And it was just so interesting diving into the science of all that. And then obviously with a breast cancer diagnosis and treatment comes lots of side effects. There were lots of side effects from chemo. It caused early menopause for me at age 40, which brings with it a whole kettle of fish. And also had osteoporosis, early osteoporosis as a result of chemotherapy and early menopause. So there were just lots of ways in which my body just felt a bit broken, and I just wanted to fix them and kind of future-proof it for the next 40 years.
Yeah, I had no idea that, that chemo or going through cancer and the treatments would, maybe I vaguely knew that it could put you into early menopause, but I didn't know that about the osteoporosis, and there are so many lifestyle factors that can help with that, help to reduce the harm or the risk. Yeah, that's really interesting.
It was actually so interesting because when I wrote Mindful Drinking, I didn't want to make it at all scaremongery or kind of saying these are all of the awful health things that will happen if you drink too much. But it's good for people to know. I framed it as the benefits of drinking less alcohol is to reduce your risk of all these things. So I did go into some of the illnesses and chronic conditions that can be caused by drinking too much alcohol over a long period of time. And when I came to learn about the research into breast cancer, I was just absolutely astounded. This was in 2017 when I wrote the book. There were over 100 separate, really good studies directly linking drinking alcohol to breast cancer.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm a woman in my late 30s whose grandmother had breast cancer. I feel like I should know this. When I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I signed up for everything that the NHS offers in terms of around the treatment. They do holistic stuff. And one of them was an online nutrition workshop. Everything was online, obviously, because it was COVID. And it was a nutritionist sort of talking through how to eat well and how to be healthy throughout breast cancer treatment, and also how to reduce your risk of breast cancer going forward. And when she started talking about alcohol, she was explaining the risks, and she was saying just the facts as they are. And as this is the advice in Britain and in America, I know they say there is no safe amount of alcohol to drink in terms of breast cancer risk. Every drink increases your risk, basically. It's quite stark, the advice. And when she shared that, everybody on this Zoom call was like, I've never heard this before. And I just kept my mouth shut. I was like, I wrote a whole bloody book on this. And yeah. And even having read that, I didn't stop drinking. I've only been drinking a bit more mindfully. Yeah, I would say that was when I had my breast cancer diagnosis that changed my relationship with alcohol again, where I went down to being, I was sober for basically a year during treatment. And then now I would say I'm probably 99% sober. I'll have a really occasional drink, but it's so rare that I think of myself as a sober person.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating that there has been this information and this research out for so long, and it's still not common knowledge. It's still not wildly out there in the public sphere. We know that smoking is so bad for us. That's been pushed on us everywhere. But alcohol,
it's
not
so
so
interesting because I was interviewing an oncologist about this, and I said, "Are you aware of this? Do you talk to your patients about it?" And he said, "No, people have just had this diagnosis. They've been given all this really bad news, and then you're going to say, now you can't have a glass of wine. You can't say that to people." And it was
It's an interesting
like,
perspective. Yeah.
I think this is quite important information that some people might find useful. And he was like, well, I don't think they would. He just thought people would respond really badly to hearing that. And I think some people probably would.
Yeah.
But then I think other people would be like, that's really important information. I'm really glad I know it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you don't have to say it, but maybe there's a pamphlet you can give or something. Like, come on. Or things to, I'm guessing it would be in things to avoid, or I don't know, maybe not. But yeah, it is mind-blowing.
Nobody gave me that advice, that's for sure. Apart from this nutrition workshop, but that was only because I signed up for that as a person who's interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it was not given out standard advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know that was in, I think 2020 was when the American Cancer Society came out with their guidelines related to alcohol, and they said that was like a big deal back then. I know everybody was talking about it. To reduce your cancer risk, there is no safe amount of alcohol. That every drink is going to increase your risk of getting cancer.
Yeah,
that was a big deal. Everybody in the sober community and the sober curious and all that latched onto that and was putting that out there. But
yeah, outside of that, I feel like it's not very widely known.
Yeah.
No.
People say, "Oh, it's good. Glass of wine is good for your heart." They kind of count the research that they want to hear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When you said earlier, when you were talking about Queen Elizabeth and was it your grandmother who lived till 98 and had a G&T every night, I would have heard that story and been like, see?
Yeah.
There's people doing it. I can do it, even though I never liked gin when I was drinking. But if I liked that, it wouldn't be 1, it would be 5 or 6 or 10. And I would ignore that piece of it, but latch on to the fact that, oh yeah, this person eats bacon, smokes a cigar, and drinks whiskey every day, and he's 99.
But it's so interesting, though, because with something like cancer, every diagnosis is so multifactorial. There are so many different elements to causation, and you can't really say that anything causes or prevents cancer. You can only really say these things increase your risk and these things reduce your risk. Yeah. Because even with something as clear-cut as smoking, most people know smoking cigarettes increases your risk of lung cancer, but you can't even really say that it causes lung cancer because people smoke and don't get lung cancer. So there's always something going on. But obviously there are some situations where it increases your risk so much you could almost call it causation, such as with smoking and lung cancer. And I think you could say the same with drinking and breast cancer.
Yeah. I wonder if, I don't know, maybe I'll ask my kiddo, she's studying health sciences at high school this year, she's doing a health class. I wonder when they talk about, because I know they do address alcohol, I wonder if they do mention that it increases the risk of cancer. I don't know. I don't remember learning about it when I was at high school. I remember learning about how you get drunk and that's not safe and that's not good for you, but I don't remember. Yeah, I wonder if it's part of the curriculum these days. Are they starting to educate our kiddos a little bit earlier that it's not the worst side effect of drinking isn't just getting drunk and doing something dumb.
Yeah. Although when you're young, probably the fear of doing something dumb is more of a deterrent than maybe getting cancer at some point in the future.
Yeah, than when you're 30 and you're old anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Kids these days. Yeah, I always thought it was like, oh, liver. That's it. It impacts my liver. But no, even and I can't stand all of what about your heart? It's like, why do you say that? Oh, because antioxidants or something like that. I'm like,
yeah, eat some damn blueberries.
I'm always like, well, it's a better way to go about that. If you really cared about that antioxidant that it has, is blueberries. But yeah, it's not about that. It's about the alcohol. That's the negative side of it.
Yeah.
am interested in that future proofing. I'm curious if you want to share, what's something that you bite your tongue on that some people ask or that you want to tell people about, but you hold back because, like the doctor's saying, they're not going to want to hear that. What have you learned that you maybe do or just think about that you hold back because you don't want to be that person at parties?
I would say it does not make me popular. I would say it's sugar. People hate to hear that. So as part of this same nutrition workshop where this nutritionist told us about the dangers of alcohol and breast cancer, she also talked about sugar and your blood sugar levels. And she went deep into the science of how, I remember at one point she showed this diagram of like sugar. This was not exactly what it was, but this is how it has stuck in my mind ever since. Kind of turning a healthy cell into a cancer cell. It was like, and then it's a damaged cell and that can become cancer. And so she said large amounts of sugar, disrupted blood sugar levels can be a big contributing factor. I would say that is, I will tell people they shouldn't drink. They don't like to hear it. But when it comes to sugar, that's what they give their kids. That's how they celebrate their birthday. It's so sugary foods, even more than alcohol, because it's like such a child-friendly thing, are so connected to like love and belonging and reward and celebration, and people really don't like to hear that they should probably have less sugar. So that is a thing where I definitely bite my tongue, and I slightly regret not biting my tongue on it now because people hate hearing it.
Yeah, Emma needs to hear that. Kevin needs to hear that too.
I was gonna say I hate hearing it, and I need to hear it all at the same time. Yeah,
it's funny. They say that when you drink less alcohol, you get more of a sweet tooth because you don't realize how much sugar there is in alcohol because it doesn't taste sweet necessarily. So when you stop having it, you are having a lot less. It can make you crave sugary things. Lots of people I've heard of, like they have said for years, "Oh, I don't have a sweet tooth. I would always rather than a dessert, I'd rather have a cheese board with a nice red wine." And then when they stop having the wine, they're like, "I just want some cake."
Yeah.
It's really weird.
What's chocolate on the menu?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had a sweet tooth before. I was that person who would rather just have a drink instead of the actual dessert, and then I stopped drinking, and it was all full go.
Yeah, now that dessert is a lot more tempting.
Yeah. I'm asking for a friend. Is 6 years too long without alcohol to be using that as an excuse? I'm past the point of being able to use the excuse like I just gave it up, and because the sugar monster is real, but now I'm just back to sweet tooth.
I don't think you don't need an excuse. Like, it is hard to cut down on sugar. It's so human beings have evolved to crave sugary things because that in the olden days that would have meant like a fresh crunchy apple or something.
I was gonna say we found a bush of raspberries or something, some kind of berries, and we just ate all of them because we don't know when the next one will show up.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember early on in my sobriety journey, it would have been maybe 4 months in, and husband and I are always like ships in the night, working and passing, and I work from home, and so he didn't necessarily see my caffeine or coffee and sugar addiction because he was out at work and I was at home. And then we were away for a long weekend together, and he sat me down at the breakfast table and said, "Do you think maybe you've transferred your alcohol addiction to coffee and sugar?" And I was like, "Yeah, get with the script, babe, like 100%, but isn't this better than drinking?" And so now do you think maybe it might be time to address that sugar addiction? And I'm like, oh, yes, I know.
As you brought a suitcase full of New Zealand candy to America and took a suitcase full of American candy back to New Zealand.
I had to buy an extra bag to get all the treats back to New Zealand from America. Yeah. It's bad. But yes, thank you, Rosamund, for
American chocolate is awful. I'm sorry to all the Americans listening, but you have to have a dairy milk or something like Hershey's chocolate is terrible. It's terrible.
I took several kilos of Whittaker's chocolate. I don't know if you have Whittaker's in the UK. It's a New Zealand chocolate brand. You might be able to. Nigella Lawson was their spokesperson for a little bit, so you might get some in some boutique shops.
Yeah.
So I took several kilos of Whitakers. I took several kilos of Cadbury's Crunchy Bars. Were a massive hit with the Americans.
Yeah. Delicious.
Cadbury's is a
I'm just going to say I'm a little bit sick of all of the non-Americans talking shit about chocolate and coffee here in America.
Should we start talking about American cheese?
Oh, I don't think I had cheese when I was not like a cheese platter. Can't think.
And
No.
at the same time, I want to travel more to experience these wonderful things, and yet don't want to know. I don't want to take the red pill. No, I don't want to see behind the matrix here. I want to live in ignorance with what I think is good chocolate, good enough chocolate.
You're acclimatized.
Yes.
Yeah. Ignorance is bliss, my friend.
Exactly.
So if everything goes to plan, which having kids and a job and all of that, it's tricky, but what does a well day look like to you? What would your ideal day look like? A day of wellness for you?
Ooh, so I never used to do any exercise. This was because before having breast cancer, I thought of myself as pretty healthy. I ate pretty healthily. I was a mindful drinker, but I didn't do any exercise. And I think it was because in my mind, I associated exercise with weight loss. And I thought, I don't feel like I need to lose weight, so I don't need to exercise, which is obviously such a ridiculous way to think about moving your body. And I don't know, I guess I was just raised on a diet of you burning calories off or earning a meal by working out in the gym or whatever. And it's just so ridiculous, that whole thing. And obviously having had breast cancer, and I started learning about all of the research there is now into the benefits of exercise after cancer. And I think particularly with breast cancer, it can reduce your risk of recurrence by half, which is incredible. They give people chemo to reduce the risk of recurrence by 20%. And exercise is even more powerful than that.
Wow.
I realised I actually do have to do some exercise. I'm a very naturally lazy person, so I found it really hard to get into it. But I have got into running. So, so I'm really slow. Like it's not really running. It's more like a plod, a jog. And I jog around my local woods. So a well day for me would be doing that in the morning, then having a protein-rich breakfast. I know protein is such a thing at the moment. Everyone keeps talking about how we need to eat more protein. Yeah. And I think mainly we can all chill out about that, as I understand it. But especially as a woman who's had early menopause, protein is important. So I do love eggs, and I would like a brunchy breakfast with eggs and grilled tomatoes, which is healthy and delicious. And then, one thing that I also have really got into since having had breast cancer and trying to incorporate more movement into my life is yoga. I love yoga now. And not just the kind of sun salutations. And like when you think of yoga, you think of downward dogs and all the kind of more active yoga. I also love the really slow, like yin yoga and yoga nidra, where it's like you stay in positions for a really long time and you just really focus on your breathing, and it's more about relaxation than exercise. And I've just found such a huge benefit from that in terms of managing stress and anxiety and calming down my nervous system in the evening. And I feel like that's been a huge benefit, because I never used to do anything like that. I didn't even used to think about managing stress as a thing. So that's been really powerful for me as well. And then for dinner, I love having dinner with my kids. This is one thing that I'm doing with my kids at the moment, is trying to get them to eat more different types of vegetables. They are quite good at eating veg, but they know what they like and they don't like to veer from it too much. So we're trying to eat vegetables that are in season. And this afternoon, for instance, after I picked up my daughter from after school club, we went into the greengrocers and I said, choose a vegetable that I haven't seen you eat in the last 6 months, something different from the usual carrots or cucumber or whatever she will happily eat on a normal day. But it's your choice. You can choose anything here. And it's actually really amazing greengrocers with loads of choice. and she chose these sugar snap peas. And yeah, I love like trying to encourage my kids to make healthy choices and cooking dinner for them and sitting down as a family to eat it together and chatting about our days and stuff. I feel like that has an enormous benefit, not only in terms of the healthy meal you're eating, but also just in terms of feeling good as a family. I think that's so important. So yeah, that would be my healthy day.
I love that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love to like having them pick out the vegetable, because if you brought home sugar snap peas, hey, we're gonna have this. No.
Yup.
Yeah. But yeah, it's such a great idea.
Yeah, giving them a full sense of control.
Yeah.
I grew up in a family where we most often ate dinner on the couch, on the sofa, in front of the TV, watching the news, mainly because our dining table was just like overloaded with shit, paperwork and all kinds of crap. And so a big thing that I push, I don't know, I'm big with our family of, we have dinner at the table, we sit down, we eat, devices off, we chat. It's when you're a busy family with teenagers and 2 working parents, it's not often that you all sit down at the table together, but that you're all together as a family and able to have a conversation. And it forces the kiddos to think about what they're eating, but also think about how to make conversation.
Yeah. And I'm very aware, because my kids are 8 and 10, so I'm very aware that I'm in that kind of sweet spot where they're old enough to have a grown-up conversation and actually be quite funny and interesting, and also young enough to still want to hang out with us and still want to. We're in control still. And I know my son's going to secondary school in September, and I know it's all going to change.
Yeah, welcome to the teenage years. May the odds be ever in your favor.
Yeah.
One
nice thing that I got a text this morning that my daughter, as she was driving, she wasn't texting while she was driving, but she texted me before she left school, and she's like, "Want anything from Starbucks?" I'm like, amazing. Yes, please. So there are benefits when they get older, but
I can't wait for those days.
Yeah. Granted, that she uses the card. It's not like she's buying, but she uses my card that has all of that, has all the money on. But anyway, as long as she delivers it to me.
Yeah, delivered coffee. Amazing. Alrighty.
Since we didn't have any nuggets, Emma, I think we can wrap it up.
Thanks so much, Rosamund, for chatting with us today. Where can people find you to contact you? How do they reach out?
I would say Substack is the best place. So my Substack is called Well, It's All About How to Be Healthier, and it's rosamunddean.substack.com.
Awesome. Thanks. We'll pop that in the show notes and tag Definitely. It in the socials as well.
Thank you.
And I think I'm going to be listening to this. I'm looking at it now, and imperfectionism and the power of daily-ish habits. Love habits, and I'm actually reading Meditation for Mortals by Oliver Berkman.
It's a great book.
Yeah. So that's what I'll be doing for the next 21 minutes after this. Yes, we will add that into the show notes. And thank you so much for joining us today and sharing on the Reframeable Podcast. So thank you all for listening to another episode brought to you by the Reframe app. Reframe is the #1 iOS and Android app to help you cut back or quit drinking alcohol. It uses neuroscience to reframe your relationship with alcohol and unlock the healthiest, happiest you. If you are enjoying this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share with those that you feel may benefit from it. And I want to thank you again for listening, and be sure to come back again for another episode. Have a great day.
Bye, friends.
Thank you.